Hello, yes, okay. I guess that everybody's in the room. I guess that we can start. Hello, everyone. Hello to everyone. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. C'est un plaisir d'être ici avec vous aujourd'hui. Mon nom est Catarina Albuquerque et je suis la PDG du partenariat assainissement et eau pour tous. Laissez-moi jouer ici avec la traduction. Exactly. So welcome to this event where we will be launching our new results framework. As many of you know, because you were deeply involved in the whole process, in 2019, we developed with many of you, with our steering committee members, we developed a strategy that was approved at the end of the year, at the end of 2019, a strategy to achieve by 2030 our vision of water and sanitation for all, always and everywhere. You all know this text that was approved in our steering committee meeting of December 2019 in Hanoi. At that same meeting, at the meeting in Hanoi, our steering committee, happy with the progress made, but not yet satisfied, asked us to develop regional roadmaps, and many of you have been working on these regional roadmaps, a global roadmap that we are still working on. The regional roadmaps will hopefully be approved at the end of the month by the steering committee. But you also asked us to develop a results framework. The opinion of the steering committee was that we need to make sure that we deliver on the strategy. We need to know where we are making progress, and we also need to understand whether we are doing the right things in order to help us adapt and improve along the way. We must understand where the difficulties lie, where the bottlenecks are, but also where we have successes. So the results framework, the SWA results framework, corresponds to this need. It's not only that it was a request by the steering committee, but it is an indispensable tool for us to monitor our collective progress. It is a tool that has been developed with you, with our partners, for the benefit of the entire partnership. You might know that we created a working group represented by different constituencies, and also that we piloted this results framework in 5 countries, that we adjusted some things here and there, and that the final results framework was approved by our steering committee recently on the 28th of January. In the midst of all of this, we recruited Agnès Marsan, who is now inside the Secretariat, the person who is in charge of monitoring and evaluation, and the person who will be working closely with you as we implement the results framework. So we welcome our partner countries that participated in piloting and in finalizing this framework, and we are very happy to have this opportunity today to exchange with you and to share perspectives with all of you. And it's now my great pleasure to hand over the floor to our regional coordinator to take the discussion from now. Thank you so much for your attention. I know that our dear regional coordinator, Nompi, is here, but there must be a sound problem, maybe?
I think Nompi is having internet issue at the moment, but Balvan should be able to take over.
Ah, very good. Balvan, I see him. Balvan, Mr. Balvan Godara.
Yes, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Very
Dear
well,
colleagues,
Barbara.
yes.
Very well.
And I hope you cannot see me. So I'm very happy to be speaking on behalf of myself and of my colleague Nompi. Thank you. I'll speak in English and then in French. So thank you for joining us today. We're organizing this webinar so that we can all become more familiar with the results framework of the SWA and to understand the different roles that we as partners will play in it. And also to discuss how we can use this tool in our daily work so that we achieve the vision of sanitation and water for all everywhere and always. So we'll start with a short presentation of the results framework by our colleague Agnès Marsan, who is the monitoring and evaluation specialist within the SWA Secretariat. And then we shall invite the two countries, Zimbabwe and Niger, to share their experience because they're two of the 5 pilot countries in which the results framework was tested in 2020. And their experience and their piloting was very important because it has helped us to refine the framework itself. We'll then have time to ask questions to the speakers and also to share your perspectives, your own perspectives on the results framework. A couple of housekeeping notes. Please indicate your name and affiliation in the chat function so that we are able to ensure a better follow-up to this webinar as we try to do for every other webinar. And now I shall shift to French, if that's okay with everyone. Voilà, donc je suis heureux d'être avec vous aujourd'hui pour ce webinaire et je vous remercie d'être avec nous pour ce webinaire sur le cadre de résultats SWA. Et l'objectif du webinaire aujourd'hui, c'est que nous nous familiarisons davantage avec ce cadre et que nous parlions de comment ça peut devenir un outil important dans notre travail de tous les jours, alors que nous tentons de réaliser la vision de l'eau et l'assainissement et hygiène pour tous, partout et toujours. Le webinaire va commencer avec une courte présentation par notre collègue Agnès Marsan, qui est la spécialiste suivi évaluation au secrétariat SWA. Et suite à cette présentation cadre, nous aurons des interventions des collègues du Zimbabwe et du Niger, qui sont 2 des 5 pays où ce cadre de résultats a été testé, piloté en 2020. Et puis, leur expérience lors de ce pilote nous a aidé à raffiner le cadre. Après ces 2 interventions des pays, il y aura du temps pour des questions aux intervenants et de partage de votre avis, votre espoir de ce cadre de résultats. 2 petites choses avant que je ne donne la parole à notre collègue. La première chose, merci d'indiquer votre nom et l'organisme et le pays dans la fonction chat, puisque cela nous permettra d'assurer un meilleur suivi de ce webinaire. Et la deuxième chose, c'est vous pouvez choisir la langue de votre choix, anglais ou français, avec l'icône du globe en bas de la fenêtre Zoom. Sachez que vous pouvez écouter dans les 2 langues, mais par contre, lorsque vous parlez dans une des langues, assurez-vous d'avoir choisi cette langue en particulier pour ne pas embrouiller l'interprétation entre les 2 langues. Voilà, avec ces mots, je donne la parole à notre collègue Agnès Marsan, qui va faire une petite présentation sur le cadre de résultats. Merci beaucoup et à vous, Agnès.
Good morning and good afternoon. I'm Agnès. I'm the Monitoring and Evaluation Specialist for SWA, and I'm happy to be in front of you today to discuss the results framework. The results framework is a tool that is for the partnership and for the partners to be able to track our impact, to be more accountable towards our partners and towards you especially, and to be able to improve and adapt and accelerate our efforts towards achieving SDG 6. So I'm happy to be able to discuss this today. I will now say a few words in French, and then we'll have the presentation in English with translation. Bonjour à tous. Je voulais m'adresser à vous en français aussi, vous souhaiter la bienvenue et vous dire que je suis heureuse d'être devant vous aujourd'hui pour parler du cadre de résultats de SWA. La présentation, je vais faire la présentation en anglais, mais elle sera traduite pour vous par nos interprètes. Vous aurez aussi accès à la présentation PowerPoint en français à travers le lien que notre collègue Kevin devrait maintenant coller dans le chat. So, si vous cliquez sur ce lien, vous pourrez lire la présentation en français. Donc, vous pourrez entendre en français avec le traducteur et vous pourrez lire en français la présentation qui est en ligne disponible pour vous. À la fin de la présentation, on aura une session de questions et réponses et vous pourrez bien sûr vous exprimer en français et on pourra vous répondre en français. Donc, je vous souhaite la bienvenue et maintenant, je vais passer en anglais à nouveau. Et j'espère que tout sera bien compréhensible et n'hésitez pas à poser des questions en français. Okay, let me just share the presentation. Okay, so the topics that we will discuss today in brief are the SWA monitoring for 2020-2030. As Katarina said, we have a new strategy for the coming 10 years, and we needed a tool to monitor our progress towards this strategy and these objectives. This is the SWA monitoring, and this is the results framework. We will also discuss the role of the SWA partners in this monitoring, and we will discuss process and timeline. The results framework, it has been developed last year by a task team. So this task team was composed of monitoring and evaluation specialists coming from the different countries, from the different partners, from the different constituencies. They came together, they sat together for 6 months in order to develop this results framework. And this is what we will present today. Once the results framework was developed, then we piloted it. We piloted it with 5 countries, 5 SWA countries. And this helped us to refine and to adapt and to improve the results framework in order to come to the results that we will present to you today. It was then approved by the steering committee, and now we will hopefully roll it out together. This results framework is using different types of data. We're using data that is existing in global monitoring and in global databases, such as GLASS or JMP. We also use data that we collect, I'm saying the Secretariat, that the Secretariat collects regarding its activities. For example, an activity like today, a webinar, we would record the number of participants. We would record your satisfaction to this event. And this is the kind of information that the Secretariat has access to and collects, and that will help us also to know whether we are making good progress. The third type of data that we would want to use is what we call the country self-assessment. And this is really what is new and what is different about this approach and this results framework. The country self-assessment, they require engaging country partners, so you, in every country, to assess 6 indicators that have to do with the SWA strategy. These indicators will be updated annually for all countries starting this year. And they will then be aggregated at regional and global level for regional and global assessment and for global assessment of the partnership. Now, to give you a complete picture of the results framework, I will not go too much into detail today of what are the indicators, but if you are interested, the full detail is available on the SWA website, and my colleagues Tabia and Kevin will now paste the links so that you can have access to full detailed information. But today we will just have a quick sneak peek and try to give you a global overview. So this is the overview. What you see on the left is what we call the theory of change. This is the description of how we as a partnership, expect change to happen in the sector and in the world so that we achieve our final goal, that is water, sanitation, and hygiene for all, always, and everywhere. In order to do that, to achieve that, we have defined outputs, so activities. We are doing things, the Secretariat is doing things, the partners are doing things, the countries are doing things, everybody's working towards this objective, right? So the first level that we will try to monitor and to follow is this output level. What are we doing and what is the direct result of what we are doing? For example, when SWA organizes a high-level meeting, like the finance ministers' meetings last year, well, we are hoping that a lot of ministers will join. We are hoping that all of the countries will be represented at ministerial level, that finance ministers specifically will be present, that participants to this event will be satisfied about it and will be able to use what was shared in their daily work. So these are the kinds of things that we will try to measure and to assess at output level. But of course, whatever activity we do, so let's say an FMM or a high-level meeting, we do it with in mind a longer-term change. We do it with in mind the idea that this will change something at country level, at sector level, and it will help us to achieve our objectives. So it will help us to build better political will. It will help us to work with strong multi-stakeholder platforms. It will help us to achieve securing more finance for the sector, for example. So this more long-term results is what we call the outcome level. The outcomes are the intended results, the more long-term results of our activities. We will try to get a sense of whether we are progressing in that direction. And we will do that through existing data, like glass, for example, that gives us a very good picture of what is happening in a country. But what we felt we needed in SWA and what we are proposing to get through what I call the country self-assessment is the partner's perspective and the partner's analysis over what is happening in the country. So we will ask you to discuss what is happening in the country and to let us know what you think are the gaps, what you think should be done, and where you think you should be. Hopefully, this will help us to better understand how we achieve change and to better progress towards the ultimate level, that is the goal level of achieving water, sanitation, and hygiene for all, always, and everywhere. And in order to know whether we are progressing towards this direction, we will use mainly JMP data, which are giving us good estimates of access to wash in all of the countries in the world, or pretty much all of them. So today, I would like to dive in this outcome level and to dive into what we call the country self-assessments. The country self-assessment, as I said, is the country level of the monitoring. It's where you tell us what you think still needs to be done, what you think is very good achievement in your country, what you think is a good analysis of the context and the situation in your country. Why we would like to have that? We would like to have this in order to monitor the progress towards the SWA objective in each country, and in order to be able to aggregate it to assess whether SWA is contributing to change. We also would like to do that because it would provide an opportunity for the SWA partners in each country to have a constructive dialogue about the situation in the country with regards to the 3 SWA objectives. The 3 objectives being political will, multi-stakeholder approaches, strong systems, and finance for WASH. So what it is exactly? Well, concretely, it is a discussion, so a meeting or workshop with stakeholders from the sector in a country. The discussion will revolve around 6 questions, these 6 questions being linked to the 3 objectives that I just mentioned. And then the result of this discussion, the answers to these 6 questions will be recorded in a standard manner that would help us to make analysis and aggregation at regional and global level. Let's talk about the process, how it would look like. So the 6 indicators need to be discussed in a multi-stakeholder meeting. So trying to get all the constituencies in one place, using existing processes in the country. In each country, you do have already lots of processes and meetings and platforms where you meet. Well, we hope we can use some of them in order to have this discussion happening. This discussion is building on existing data and on existing monitoring processes such as GLASS or NGOR or AMCAL. We can very much integrate with these processes that are already existing. And each of the indicators is in the form of a question to be answered. So to put it simply, it's just 6 questions that we will ask you to discuss. To discuss based on existing data, existing information that you have, but based also on your personal expertise and perspective on the country and on the sector. The discussion would revolve around 6 different topics. So because it's 6 different questions, we would ask you to discuss political will in your sector and your country, multi-stakeholder platforms, the link with other sectors and other SDGs, your progress on commitments that each of the different partners have made, finance, and targeting inequalities. 2021 would be the first time that you would be having this discussion and doing this country self-assessment. So this first country self-assessment would serve as a baseline for future updates. The idea being that once you have had this discussion this year, then it will be easy to update it every year, to know what has changed, to easily get a sense of how we are progressing. In order to lead and to coordinate and to facilitate this process, we would really like to have in each country what we would call a country monitoring champion, which would be a person that can be from government, from CSO, from research and learning institutes, from even private sector, from external support agency, from any of the constituencies and any of the partners in the country. This person would be willing to coordinate and facilitate this process, to be trained on these indicators and to be in contact with all the other champions from all the other countries. Then each country could complete this exercise and this discussion at any time in the year before October 2021. So this is what the process would look like. In order to get this process started, we would like to go through the government focal points, to work with the government focal points, and to ask each of them to nominate or to seek volunteers to act as the country monitoring champion. Then to support this champion to plan a multi-stakeholder discussion, which means organizing a meeting or providing space on the agenda of existing meetings to hold this discussion. And then we would, of course, ask the government focal point to participate in this discussion and to help validate the final results. Throughout the process, we Secretariat, and especially me as a monitoring and evaluation specialist, will be available to support you and to support the champions and to offer all the help we can offer in order to help you conclude this process and conduct this self-assessment. If we talk about key dates throughout the year, what we would really hope for is that by the end of the month, you would be able to identify one person, this person being the champion. Once you have identified this person, then we can take it and follow up with that person. The champion would receive the opportunity to be trained on the 6 indicators and on the methodology we want to use, either in April or in June. All the champions from the different countries will be trained as a group together. So they will form a group that will exchange experiences with each other and support each other throughout the process. In the spirit of still exchanging and learning between countries, we would also like to organize in September an exchange meeting for countries and for champions. This meeting would gather countries that have done their country self-assessment already and countries that are still in the process of doing it. And they could exchange and support each other and help each other find solutions for potential challenges or share successes. Then we would take October till January to analyze the results of each of the countries, to consolidate and to aggregate. And in January 2022, we would like to organize a learning workshop and joint analysis workshop where we could all look together at the global results and discuss on what to do next. So as I mentioned, we have piloted this. We have piloted this approach in 5 countries: in Afghanistan, in Niger, in Papua New Guinea, in Paraguay, and in Zimbabwe. The partners that participated in this pilot were pretty enthusiastic about the method and about the process. And what they told us is that this was really a unique opportunity to discuss key level issues as a sector all together and to document the progress and to draft action points. They also shared that this was an opportunity to discuss existing documents. I'm thinking of all these reports, all these analyses that each of the partners are making, but that we rarely have time to sit together and discuss together and make sure we share this information. Well, this would be a great platform to do that. This would also be an opportunity to analyze existing data for the sector. We, as Secretariat, would provide you with an overview of the existing data in the sector for your country, and this would be a strong basis for you to start the conversation. This is also an opportunity to discuss involvement and participation of all stakeholders and different constituencies in the national processes. Because we ask for all partners to be represented in a country and for all constituencies to be represented in this discussion, well, this is a good starting point to actually discuss when it is actually difficult to be all together and what are the bottlenecks. This is also an opportunity to discuss and to review the commitments that are made by each of the partners. So this is in a nutshell what came out from the countries that participated in this pilot. And here, if you want to read, you can see a few quotes from them. But of course, it's always better to have first-hand information. So we have here in the room the country monitoring champions that facilitated this process in Zimbabwe and in Niger. So we will ask them now to just take the floor and explain how it was, what was the process in their country. So we will start with Zimbabwe, and I will ask Mr. Bloodwell Husike to join me. Mr. Bloodwell Husike is representing a civil society organization in Zimbabwe, and he was leading and facilitating the process for Zimbabwe. Mr. Husike, are you here?
Yes, Agnes. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So could you start by introducing yourself and the organization you come from, and let us know how you became the country monitoring champion for Zimbabwe?
Okay, thank you, Agnes. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bloodwell Husike. I work for an organization called Untitled Trust in Zimbabwe as a programs manager. Untitled Trust is a local non-governmental organization that works in the water, sanitation, and hygiene sector. And our prime responsibility is to support government, local NGOs, and communities in advancing the wash service delivery systems, normally in peri-urban and rural areas. That's our main area of thrust. But of late, due to the COVID response, we've also ventured into urban wash. So basically, that's the background to. So I'm basically from Zimbabwe. Then the next question was, how did I become the focal point of this country monitoring champion for Zimbabwe? What happened is that the SWA Secretariat wrote to the government focal point, which is housed in what we call the Department of Wash Coordination within the ministry responsible for water resources, requesting for the nomination of a champion for the country. The Department of Water and Sanitation Coordination then wrote to the several members of SWA who are in the country, requesting for volunteers to come on board to take up that task, if I can call it. For Zimbabwe, 3 organizations did volunteer to become the country monitoring champion. Actually, it was like 3 managers. One was from an international non-governmental organization. The other one was from an international financial institution. And then, of course, myself, I was coming from a local NGO constituent. Then the SWA steering committee focal point in government, then a bit of a challenge now. They don't know how to select the champion. So what they did was to send, to come up with a kind of voting system whereby they then requested the different SWA members to vote for their preferred organization and candidate out of the 3 nominees. So this was done through a link that was created, and organizations were simply placing their names against their preferred candidate. So that's how I became the CMC, and our organization was steering the ship, so to speak. So we were duly nominated as the country monitoring champion.
You were actually elected country monitoring champion of Zimbabwe by the other SWA partners.
Yes, it was actually an election process.
Can you tell us quickly about the process of the country self-assessment in Zimbabwe? What did you organize and how did it happen in your country?
Okay, soon after we had been nominated as the country monitoring champion, what we then did was we were introduced to yourself, to Agnes Mason, who was the M&E specialist, or who is this M&E specialist at the SWA Secretariat. Then Agnes and ourselves, we then organized a quick meeting where we were just given a run through of the expected work at hand. So we had a virtual meeting with members of Untitled Trusts, mainly from the monitoring evaluation team and also the program section, where Agnes just ran through the objectives of this whole exercise. She then asked us to arrange for a meeting where we would then have a training session with the training specialist, Angela Houston from IRC, with herself as the co-facilitator. So this was, I think it was about a 1-hour meeting where they took us through the whole pilot, results monitoring framework process. Thereafter, we then arranged an internal meeting where we just came up with a quick plan for now we're going to execute the work at hand. So initially we started by holding an internal meeting, a planning meeting, where we then agreed that we just, as an organization, we just went through the 6 indicators so that we would also familiarize on the kind of work that was on at hand. After that meeting, we then arranged for the country steering committee, the SWA steering committee members to do the initial scoring. Because what we then found was that because of the time that was needed, we estimated that maybe we would need 6 hours or more to do this exercise properly. We needed to start with a small group. So we just started with the SWA steering committee members and some selected members from what we call the National Sanitation and Hygiene Task Force, which is also comprised of both the CSOs and government. So we then booked at a hotel, a local hotel. That's what it was. People felt that we needed a physical meeting for that exercise. So we had a meeting which started, I think, around 8:30 in the morning until about 1600 hours in the afternoon. It was quite a lengthy process. That was how we then did the scoring. It was a long meeting. Thereafter, we then organized for an all stakeholders validation meeting. This is where we now called all the SWA members in country, as well as the members of the other institutions who are not normally members of the WASH committees, like universities, our donor communities like World Bank, UNICEF, and so forth. So we then held a 3-hour meeting, a validation meeting, whereby we now took the team through the process that we went through, and then to validate the results that were pre-scored on the 6 indicators. After that process, we then went on to just validate it as the country champion, and also to fill in the other forms here.
Yes. So if I summarize quickly the steps that you took, number 1, you had a training with us on the indicators. Number 2, you convene internally within your organization to prepare. Number 3, you had a one-day meeting with a smaller group that was representing the different constituents of SWA, and you did the country self-assessment together. And number 4, you had a validation meeting, a virtual meeting this time, that was including or inviting all the SWA partners in the country to look at the results that you came at with the small group and to validate them. Is that correct?
Exactly, Agnes, that was the process. And maybe a serious omission, we also invited Agnes to participate in the initial scoring, although, yeah, for much of the process.
Can you now let us know what you found interesting about this process as a participant, but what also as a country monitoring champion?
I think the most interesting part of this whole process was that it coincided with a time when, okay, maybe I didn't actually mention it in the background. Our organization, Brahman's Trust, at the time was also the secretariat for the Water Supply and Sanitation Collaborative Council. And we are also a member of the evaluation team for GLASS, as well as for the NGO commitments. So at that point, we were also having similar exercises that we were doing in terms of evaluating country progress. So it also gave us a chance. It was quite interesting to note some of the similarities and some major differences in terms of not only content, but also the processes. So maybe that was the most interesting part of the whole exercise. That's why we were also able maybe to quickly critique some of the areas. I think that I might not be able to go into detail, but for example, how we were going to do the scoring and so forth. I think we then discussed it with Agnes, and I think it also fed into the whole review process.
Yes, there was really the value of the pilot to be able to get your feedback and to refine and to adapt the methodology thanks to your recommendations. I would like to ask you now whether you encountered any challenges, how you overcame them, and whether you have any recommendation for the other countries that will probably embark in this process soon.
Yes, I think one of the biggest challenges that we found out, not only in the scoring process, but even in the validation process, I think there was one common challenge. We had problems. I mean, problems in the time factor, because some of the people who attended both meetings were not really familiar, so to speak, with the monitoring and evaluation methods. So what we found is in most cases, people who were making meaningful contribution were mainly people either from with an M&E background or with a programs background, because maybe it's because this is already the nature of their work. Whereas others who came in from other departments other than those that I've just mentioned were more like trying to learn on what all these processes were all about, rather than making meaningful contributions to the process. I think that was one area that we really found. Then the other issue that we also found quite helpful was that this process, unlike the other evaluations, it actually has a very open way of identifying the gaps that are there in terms of our WASH programming. So we managed to identify a lot of gaps that obviously then inform future programming in terms of our sector. I think those were the two major issues there. Yeah.
Yes, from what you say, I hear that it's a good way to identify the gaps. I hear also that it integrates well with other monitoring processes that our partners might be getting into. And I hear also that it would be important to be mindful of who participates, because you also need in the room people that have deep knowledge over the sector and over the programs.
Exactly, my point.
Well, thank you very much, Bloodwell. If I may ask one last thing, can you give us one good reason to participate and to conduct the self-assessment in country?
Yes, I think like I just said, the one very good reason why this process is so critical is that it helps not only the sector, but also even government in terms of their programming for future WASH programs.
Very good. Thank you very much, Bloodwell.
You're welcome.
Well, now we will move to Niger and the country monitoring champion from Niger, explaining us what was the process in Niger and sharing his experience. You will see that it is the process was quite different than in Zimbabwe. And if we would have time to present all 5 countries that participated in the pilot, you would have 5 very different processes. All this to say that how and when each country wants to organize this self-assessment is really for the country and for the partners in the country to decide what is the best fit for the country, what makes sense in your context. There is no one way of doing it correctly. And we are very happy to see different things happening. So now we will switch to French, and we will give the floor to Mr. Boukari in Niger, who is representing a partner from the research and learning constituency. Bonjour, Monsieur Boukari.
Bonjour, tout le monde.
Nous sommes ravis de vous avoir là. Vous avez préparé une présentation, oui, donc je vais maintenant la partager avec tout le monde et je vais vous laisser expliquer ce qui s'est passé au Niger. C'est parti.
OK. Merci. Bonjour encore tout le monde. Je m'aimerais vous présenter l'expérience du Niger de l'auto-évaluation nationale vers le suivi des progrès des objectifs du partenariat SWA. Donc, je vais me présenter d'abord. Moi-même, je m'appelle Boukari Ousmane. Je suis de IRC, en poste au Niger, IRC Burkina Faso. Donc, je suis, comme l'a si bien souligné Agnès, du groupe catégoriel Institut de recherche et de développement. Donc, comment j'ai acquis le statut de champion du Niger? C'est que de novembre 2013 à août 2016, j'ai été assistant technique au ministère de l'Hydraulique et de l'Assainissement du Niger, sous contrat avec l'UNICEF, afin d'appuyer la mise en œuvre de processus NPRI, National Planning for Result Initiative, En français, Initiative de planification nationale orientée vers les résultats. Donc, c'est un processus qui a été mis au point par le SWA. Comment on est arrivé à organiser l'atelier national? Dans un premier temps, IRC, dans le cadre de l'analyse du contexte WASH au Niger, a fait une évaluation des déterminants fonctionnels qu'on appelle building block du système WASH. Entre-temps, donc, le SWA a défini un certain nombre d'indicateurs ou comportements collaboratifs dont l'adoption par un pays et ses partenaires permet d'améliorer les performances du secteur WASH. C'est ainsi que le ministère de l'Eau et de l'Assainissement, avec l'appui de l'IRC, a organisé un atelier national de validation de l'évaluation des déterminants fonctionnels du système WASH, de notation des résultats intermédiaires de l'ODC 6 et des indicateurs du SWA. C'est-à-dire, au cours d'un même atelier, on a mené 3 activités. La validation de l'évaluation, les déterminants fonctionnels, la notation des résultats intermédiaires et les indicateurs du SWA. Les participants à l'atelier. Donc, les groupes catégoriels du SWA qui ont participé, ils n'étaient qu'au nombre de 3. Le groupe gouvernement avec 22 participants qui représentaient 7 organisations. Le groupe organisation de la société civile avec 2 participants. Et le groupe institut de recherche et de développement avec 1 participant à ma personne. Les 2 autres groupes catégoriels n'ont pas pu participer, c'est-à-dire le groupe d'assistance extérieure et le secteur privé. Comment nous avons procédé à la notation des indicateurs? Donc, les groupes catégoriels ont évalué conjointement la situation dans le pays selon les 6 indicateurs de partenariat. Donc, pour chaque indicateur, la notation est obtenue de façon consensuelle à l'issue de discussion. Donc, on mène un débat, on prend une description donnée et chacun dit son point de vue. Donc, à l'issue d'un consensus, on retient une note. Donc, en même temps, il y a un texte justificatif qui est rédigé pour la note et qui s'appuie sur des données probantes, des noms et des dates. C'est-à-dire, on a besoin de la documentation pour appuyer la notation. On se réfère à des documents. S'ils sont présents, il faut vérifier c'est à quel niveau du document qu'on peut trouver la justification de la notation. Donc, ces sources sont versées, les sources de données et les références sont versées comme élément de preuve, justifiant la note. Les résultats. Donc, sur les 6 indicateurs, il n'y a que les indicateurs 2 et 6 qui ont obtenu des faibles notes. Donc, relativement, puisque 75 et 70. Donc, pour y remédier, les actions suivantes sont en cours. Par rapport à l'indicateur 2, c'est l'opérationnalisation de l'approche Nexus humanitaire développement, conciliant les modes opératoires humanitaire et développement. Et ensuite, l'indicateur relatif au financement. Donc, le Niger, comme vous voyez, vous allez remarquer dans les engagements du SWA, donc il s'est engagé à élaborer une stratégie de mobilisation des ressources afin de mobiliser davantage l'aide internationale et de faire appel à des investissements privés. Quelles sont les leçons que nous avons tirées de cette évaluation? La première, c'est que quand la description de la mesure de référence est partiellement satisfaite, les discussions sont plus animées. Parce que quand on dit, est-ce qu'il y a une question précise, les gens, il y a des divergences. Donc là, les discussions sont animées et ça devient très intéressant. Et on finit quand même par s'entendre sur un consensus. Ensuite, la deuxième leçon qu'on a tirée, c'est que l'atelier a fait prendre connaissance aux participants de l'importance des statistiques sectorielles. Parce que chaque fois, quand il faut argumenter, il faut appuyer une note, il faut qu'on dise où est-ce qu'on peut trouver ces statistiques-là. Les obstacles que nous avons rencontrés et les éléments de solution qu'on a eu à proposer. Le premier obstacle, c'est que c'était l'absence de certains groupes catégoriels de partenariat. Comme vous l'avez suivi au début, j'ai dit avec 3 groupes sur les 5. Donc, pour y remédier, donc, avoir les engagements, donc on s'est référé à certains documents qui concilient les engagements des 2 groupes catégoriels, notamment les aides de mémoire de la revue sectorielle annuelle et les comptes rendus du dialogue politique. C'est que depuis 2008, le Niger organise une revue sectorielle annuelle, donc du secteur WASH, donc, où les différents partenaires participent. Donc là, en ce moment, on consigne les engagements des différentes parties, que ce soit le gouvernement, les partenaires de la société civile et les privés. Donc, en l'absence des deux groupes catégoriels, nous sommes référés à ces comptes rendus, à ces aides-mémoires de la revue sectorielle. La prochaine évaluation. Donc, les participants à l'évaluation ont trouvé l'exercice très intéressant et ont souhaité sa tenue de façon régulière. Parce que, comme je vous l'ai dit, c'est des animations, des débats. Donc, il y a des gens qui sont, il y a des spécialistes, il y a des non-spécialistes. Donc, vous remarquez, donc ça devient intéressant. Donc, l'amélioration de la participation des groupes catégoriels sera obtenue si l'exercice se déroule à travers une réunion regroupant tous les cadres de concertation du secteur. C'est-à-dire, ici au Niger, on a un cadre de concertation État, partenaire technique et financier du secteur WASH. On a un second cadre de concertation État ONG du secteur WASH également. Et ensuite, on a un cadre de concertation État secteur privé. Donc, les cadres de concertation se réunissent de façon séparée. Donc, vraiment, dans l'exercice de cette évaluation, nous nous sommes dit que si on tient une réunion unique qui doit regrouper les trois cadres de concertation et ensuite inviter les instituts de recherche et de développement, ça serait vraiment une occasion idéale pour faire une évaluation fiable. Merci de votre attention.
Merci beaucoup, M. Boukari. Je vais vous poser la même question que j'ai posée à M. Russike. Si vous pouviez nous donner une seule bonne raison de réaliser cette auto-évaluation, cet atelier dans un pays, ce serait laquelle?
Bon, de toute façon, les membres du partenariat ont pris des engagements et nous sommes dit que les discussions qu'on mène, les débats au cours d'un atelier, de l'atelier, vraiment, ça contribue à la fiabilité de l'évaluation. Parce que si chacun de son côté envoie ses engagements ou fait son évaluation, il va falloir faire une synthèse, ça va faire encore l'objet de va-et-vient. Nous sommes dit, s'il y a un atelier unique, comme je l'ai dit, qui regroupe tous les groupes catégoriels, c'est intéressant de savoir comment le Niger progresse vers l'atteinte des indicateurs du secteur du SWA.
Merci beaucoup.
Oui.
Je vais repasser en anglais pour donner la parole à la coordinatrice régionale. Nampi, I would like to give back the floor to moderate the question and answer session.
Thank you so much, Ines, and thank you, everyone, particularly our champions who have just shared with us their experiences. So now we are opening the floor for questions. Do you have any questions, participants? Any questions from the floor?
I have a question, please. There's also a hand raised from Mr. and Mrs. Kapupu right after.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm not able to see the hands from my end, so please, colleagues, help me to indicate if there is a hand raised. Anyone who has raised his hand or her hand, please take the floor.
Yes, I raised my hand, Dr. Bua Manjang, Gambia.
Great. Please go ahead, Doctor.
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks. Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks to all the presenters. I just want to understand the process of having the representatives. Does this involve the SWA focal persons, or these are completely different individuals from our task force? Because in the Gambia here, we have a task force on sanitation task force, water sanitation task force that we form. And then we have our technical meetings, and also we have our TORs and everything in place. And then we meet in quarterly basis, but this include all partners or players in sanitation and hygiene and water. So this is where we coordinate, because we want to have a unit forum where we coordinate issues and things. So also added to that, I just want to flag back as to like the gaps that we have. We have a WASH guidelines for healthcare facilities, but we still have a gap in the healthcare facilities with regard to WASH, which we want to proceed. And we equally have, we started 3-star approach at schools and also school-led sanitation. But we still need to, we have some gaps in that. That's where we stop and we want to go ahead. And also we want to have a WASH at the points of entries, that is POEs, considering the diseases of international importance, and also the screening process and all the activities that are currently ongoing in our points of entries. We definitely need these WASH facilities at those places. So these are some of the things, but I really want to understand the nomination processes and also with regard to this results framework. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Buba, for your questions. I'll give the floor to my colleague Ines to respond. I note
Yes.
you, Mahamani, I note Chishala, I note Peter. So you will have the floor. Okay, Ines, please.
Yes, thank you for your question. Regarding the nomination process, so we will contact first the government focal point in your country. And through the government focal point in your country, there will be a nomination process. So you have seen in the examples of Zimbabwe and in Niger that it can be different depending on the country. What we will encourage is as much as possible to integrate with existing processes. So if you have already a task force that is coordinating all the efforts in the sector, this is great. And we don't want to create something parallel. We want indeed to use this task force. So when we will talk to the government focal point in Zambia, yes, we should definitely discuss to work with this task force and to see whether the person that will be the monitoring champion, so leading the country self-assessment, if this person can be from this task force, that would of course be great. I hope that answers your question. On your other question on the gaps and the strategy that you have already, I think this is a great basis to integrate our processes. If you have done a lot of this work already, well, doing the country self-assessment will be very easy, and you will have a very interesting data and reports and documents to back up the answers. And yeah, this will really facilitate the process, and I'm sure the country self-assessment can be a great complementary approach to what you have done already. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Ines, and thank you, Dr. Buma, for those questions. I'll give the floor to Peter Mahar. Peter, you have the floor. You are noted, Mahamani.
Yeah, thank you, Nampi. Thank you, Angela, for the Agnes and team presentation. I think the 6 points that are addressed self-assessment, in-country self-assessment, are very impressive. They are good. I think what I wanted to say is that the existing platform that exists, like in our case, could be the one to look to address these questions. And then while utilizing the existing platform, the idea that has already been adopted by Niger and Zimbabwe of having a champion could be now flagged in for an election or for a selection of a person who can steer this activity. Would you suggest something different than that? Because already there is a platform, though some of the members are not active in this platform, but they exist. These are the ones that actually do the processes of responding to any queries, any data collected. They are the ones responsible for it, from the CSOs and from the ministry focal person, plus the alternate member of SWA. So do you have any counter response to that suggestion? That is
Thank
one.
you.
Number two, that is one. Number two, for the pilot countries, the Niger and Zimbabwe, what are you utilizing the results? What are you using with the results, or what are you doing with the results?
Okay.
The answer is from the presenting representative of the Zimbabwe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Peter, for your question. I will just answer partly your first question, which is the existing platforms in countries. We definitely use the existing multi-stakeholder platforms, and you will be able then to select a champion from the multi-stakeholder platforms. So even if those platforms are not, not all the constituencies are represented. However, we expect all the constituencies to be represented in that multi-stakeholder platforms. Hence, you will be able then to select the champion. But let me give the floor to Ines again to add on question 1 and then answer question 2. Thank you.
Yeah, I concur to what Nompi just said. Yes, if you have existing platform, yeah, of course, let's use them. I don't have anything to oppose. I think it's a really good idea. So you can identify your champion that will be able to use these platforms. And on top of that, I think maybe this exercise can be an opportunity to reactivate those platforms. You said that some participants are not very active sometimes. Well, this is an opportunity to solicitate their participation and to reactivate some of the participants. So I think you have a great idea and really a great mindset. On your second question, what is done with the results, I will leave Mr. Roussike or Monsieur Boukari peut-être to answer.
Okay, thank you, Agnes. Just a quick response to Peter on the second question. Basically, well, like I said, we identified a number of gaps from the pilot, but as you'll appreciate, this was just a pilot, and we only expect to start using those results once we adopt the now adapted framework that will be operational from 2021. That was our understanding, but I think from a sector perspective, it was an eye-opener. We now have quite a clear view of many gaps that we have in terms of our watch programming and evaluation. But
yeah, I think that's a good point from Mr. Roussike. They piloted the first version of the results framework, and they helped us to improve it. So the version that you will receive, the questions that you will receive are a bit different, slightly, from the ones that they have answered. So we will expect Zimbabwe and Niger to do the exercise again this year and to make it even more useful. But I think Mr. Boukari also explained in his presentation how some gaps have been identified and which actions have been designed to fill these gaps. Monsieur Boukari, vous voulez rajouter quelque chose?
Oui. La question par rapport au suivi des résultats, à l'utilisation des résultats. Dans ma présentation, je disais que 2 indicateurs ont obtenu des notes relativement faibles. Et pour remédier à la situation, il va falloir, le Niger a pris des engagements pour élaborer une stratégie de mobilisation des ressources financières. Donc, nous, ce qu'on doit faire, c'est de suivre l'élaboration de cette stratégie de mobilisation des ressources financières. À la prochaine évaluation, on va se dire, est-ce que cette stratégie a été élaborée? Elle a été mise en œuvre. En ce moment, on peut apprécier l'indicateur qui a trait à cette stratégie. La deuxième activité qu'on a dit, c'est de suivre l'opérationnalisation du processus de l'approche Nexus humanitaire développement. Parce qu'il y a certains partenaires qui interviennent uniquement dans l'humanitaire. Il y a d'autres qui interviennent aussi dans le développement, parce que là où la situation est calme, il n'y a aucun problème aussi. Donc, il faut concilier ces 2 processus. Les partenaires ont pris l'engagement d'adhérer à cette approche et de la rendre opérationnelle. Donc, d'ici la prochaine opérationnalisation, on va se dire quels sont les partenaires qui ont adhéré? Est-ce que l'approche elle est effectivement opérationnelle? Voilà pour me résumer par rapport à ces deux indicateurs. Oui, je ne sais pas s'il est satisfait.
I think it's understandable.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. Thank you so much, Bukari, for the responses. Mahamane, you have the floor, and then you'll be followed by Chishala Kapupu.
Ok, c'est Mahaman Barakou, je suis consultant national au Mali. J'ai appuyé l'équipe du Mali, l'équipe SWA, pour les données financières, surtout qui sont issues de notre phase 3 de TRACFIN. Donc, ma question, je crois que je vais laisser le directeur national de l'hydraulique, je vois, il veut intervenir. Il pourra, l'aspect dont je voulais parler, c'est sûr que c'est ce dont il va parler aussi. Il s'agit des plateformes qui sont existantes et le processus de sélection des champions. Je ne sais pas comment ça se passe, bon, mais je crois que je vais laisser le directeur national de l'hydraulique qui veut intervenir. Il va peut-être en parler. Et ma dernière question, c'est par rapport à comment contacter les autres collègues, les autres champions pour pouvoir nous éclairer sur le processus d'abord d'identification et comment est-ce qu'ils animent les différentes plateformes avec lesquelles ils travaillent. Donc, la dernière, c'est si on peut avoir les contacts et puis les présentations après la session. Merci.
Thank you very much, Mahamani, for that question. Would you like to take it up, Ines?
Yes, I will switch to French.
Yes, please.
Merci, Monsieur Mahamani, pour votre question. En ce qui concerne la nomination des champions, on va contacter les points focaux gouvernementaux pour qu'ils mettent en place un mécanisme pour identifier le champion. Vous l'avez vu avec l'exemple du Niger et l'exemple du Zimbabwe, ça s'est passé de manière différente. Au Zimbabwe, il y a eu une élection avec des volontaires. Au Niger, le champion a été nommé. Donc, il peut y avoir autant de processus différents que de pays. Ça va vraiment dépendre de la situation du pays. Donc, je ne peux pas vous dire comment ça va se passer au Mali, mais je peux vous dire qu'on va contacter le point focal gouvernemental pour discuter de la meilleure manière de faire au Mali. En ce qui concerne les plateformes existantes, oui, bien sûr, il faudrait s'intégrer. Et l'exercice qu'on fait est vraiment complémentaire de ce qui existe déjà. On travaille beaucoup, par exemple, avec Glace. Et si c'est possible, ce serait très bien, par exemple, d'inviter le point focal Glace à l'auto-évaluation de votre pays. Au maximum, on aimerait effectivement intégrer avec les plateformes qui existent déjà et juste rajouter un peu de temps dans les meetings qui existent, dans les réunions qui existent pour adresser ces questions-là. Votre dernière question était sur contacter les autres champions. On peut vous fournir les informations et les coordonnées des champions qui faisaient partie du projet pilote. Ça, c'est déjà possible. Ensuite, en ce qui concerne les champions de tous les pays qui vont réaliser cette auto-évaluation cette année, ils vont chacun être formés et accompagnés en groupe. Donc, chacun des champions aura les coordonnées de tous les autres champions. Ils seront formés en même temps, ils apprendront à se connaître à travers la formation et on aura ensuite un groupe, probablement un groupe WhatsApp où tous les champions pourront communiquer entre eux. Donc, oui, on espère vraiment pouvoir favoriser les échanges au maximum entre les différents champions.
Ok, merci Agnès.
Alors, oui. Donc, avec votre permission, Agnès. Merci beaucoup, Agnès. Avec votre permission, avec la permission, bien entendu, de Mompi, notre cher collègue, Merci beaucoup à tous. Merci au secrétariat SWA pour avoir initié ces dialogues. Et moi, je salue encore une fois cette initiative d'identifier un champion de suivi des mises en œuvre des processus dans nos différents pays. Et je salue aussi cette idée que ces champions soient différents du point focal national. Voilà, exactement, effectivement. Effectivement, Maman, merci beaucoup aussi pour votre intervention. Juste que ce n'est pas des questions, c'est des commentaires pour compléter les points de vue des uns des autres. Je rappelle quand même le Mali est un des pays pionniers, je veux dire, un des pays pionniers parmi les 11 pays pionniers pour mettre en œuvre les mécanismes de redevabilité mutuelle des SWA. Nous avons eu la chance d'être présents en 2018 à Lisbonne pour lancer ces mécanismes de redevabilité mutuelle. Effectivement, comme l'a dit beaucoup d'intervenants, hein, et la Zambie aussi est un pays pionnier, Bouba Chérékoni. Au fait, la nouvelle approche des SWA en mettant en œuvre ces mécanismes de rivalité mutuelle, c'est surtout pour renforcer ce qui existe, les systèmes qui existent, les plateformes. Effectivement, dans nos pays, il y a ces plateformes. Mais quand on regarde que ce soit les Niger vient de dire que la revue sectorielle, ils ont commencé en 2008. Au Mali, nous avons commencé la revue sectorielle. L'eau et l'assainissement en 2004, c'était d'abord pour le mettre en œuvre, les OMD. Mais donc, SWA est venu avec des outils pour renforcer ce que nous faisons en ce moment. Et cette plateforme ne concernait que 2-3 catégories maximum, les gouvernements, les partenaires techniques et financiers, et à la limite la société civile. Donc, les mécanismes de redevabilité mutuelle viennent dire, bon, écoutez, ce que vous faites, c'est bon, mais les renforcer par les autres catégories exactement, instaurer un véritable dialogue, à savoir les secteurs privés et les instituts de recherche. C'est ce que nous avons fait au Mali. D'ailleurs, les engagements pays, j'ai vu, c'est des engagements pays, des SWA, ce que nous avons présenté au Costa Rica, en ce qui concerne le Mali, Maman, nous l'avons élaboré de façon multipartite, c'est un processus national multipartite, c'est des engagements pays, mais cette plateforme qui existait, qui a été élargie aux autres catégories d'acteurs, à savoir la société civile et les secteurs privés et les instituts de recherche qui ont fait aussi effectivement des engagements. Vous savez, l'évaluation, aujourd'hui, ce qui nous amène SWA par rapport à l'évaluation, c'est une innovation. Chaque année, nous avons ce qu'on appelle cette revue sectorielle ou concertation sectorielle, l'eau et l'assainissement. En ce moment, vous savez, par rapport aux engagements pays, à ce qui concernait d'allouer 5% du budget État au secteur eau et assainissement, ça c'était le premier engagement que le Mali avait pris en 2014. Et exactement, chaque année, nous, au moment de la revue sectorielle, nous évaluons où est-ce qu'on en est par rapport à ces engagements. Donc, il s'agit d'utiliser déjà ce qui existe et puis, donc, évaluer effectivement les différents engagements, des indicateurs qu'on appelle les indicateurs SWA. Sauf que cette fois-ci, exactement, c'est la même plateforme, sauf que cette fois-ci, et celui qui doit mener exactement cette évaluation, celui qui doit conduire cette évaluation, il doit être différent du point focal national, mais ça serait un travail d'équipe et qui va renforcer exactement encore l'équipe et qui va amener les autres acteurs à s'impliquer encore davantage. Maman, je pense qu'on m'a dit ici, vous savez, que nous avons un groupe de travail qu'on appelle un groupe technique des partenaires techniques et financiers, qui se réunit chaque mois. Et nous avons un comité qu'on avait mis en place, le comité SWA, qui regroupe les 5 catégories, exactement, les 5 catégories d'acteurs. Et aujourd'hui, ce que nous sommes en train de faire, c'est ce comité SWA qui devient pratiquement les bras techniques exactement de cette plateforme. Et cette plateforme, exactement, on est en train de vouloir élargir cette plateforme qui était avant plateforme PTF exactement, qui s'élargit au gouvernement, qui s'élargit à la société civile. La CNCPA est véritable là-bas, qui participe à toutes les réunions. Et aujourd'hui, nous envisageons que, au niveau de cette réunion du comité, que le secteur privé et aussi les instituts de recherche participent. Et c'est à partir de là aussi qu'on prépare la revue sectorielle prochaine qui est prévue le 1er avril. Au cours de cette revue, nous allons effectivement procéder à l'évaluation de tout ce qui est engagement pays SWA et nous allons en ce moment aussi annoncer cette nouvelle forme d'évaluation de nos engagements qui va consister à identifier un champion. Voilà ce que je voulais ajouter encore. Merci encore. Je me réjouis beaucoup de cette belle initiative. Félicitations encore au secrétariat et en l'occurrence la présidente, Madame Katharina. Merci à vous tous.
Thank you so much.
Nampi, are you still here? I don't think we can hear you still. Okay, I think Nampi had to drop.
I'm back.
Oh, you're back. Okay, good.
Sorry about that. I'm back. Thank you so much, Mr. Bukum, for that intervention. We appreciate it. There is a hand that has been up for quite some time, Chishala Kapupu, and I would request that we be very short in the interest of time. We have kept you for too long and we appreciate your patience. And after her, it will be Timothy. I think Timothy will be the last one. Thank you. Chishala, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentations. My name is Chishala. I'm part of the WASH Forum here in Eswatini, and I also work as a WASH consultant with the World Bank. My question is just a logistical one on the workshops that are to be organized in the countries. In terms of like expenses for those workshops, who covers those, or how did the other countries and the pilots do it, or what's the proposal going forward? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chishala. Ines, please, you have the floor.
Yes, this is indeed an important point. We do expect that as much as possible, this discussion can happen within existing processes. So within existing meetings, in existing cycles of meetings, so that it doesn't require extra funds. It can indeed happen that you want to organize an extra in-person meeting and that requires a small budget for like a meeting room or something like this. Because we want this to be owned by the countries and we want this to be sustainable, there is no fund in SWA Secretariat plan for that. And we hope we can, when there is an issue, try and find a solution within the country by discussing with the different partners. So this will be a case-by-case issue if needed. We hope that in most of the countries, this can be just embedded in regular processes. When that's not possible, we can just discuss case-by-case and try to find a solution.
Thank you so much, Chishala, for the question, and Ines for the response. I think it is clear. Timothy, please, you have the floor. You have 2 minutes. Right. 1 minute.
Okay. Thanks so much for the presentation. Again, I'm Timothy, CSO focal point for SWA. I think this framework will actually help improve SWA engagement at country level. So considering the issue of time, I'm just recommending that the engagement with country focal person, most especially from the government, be done sooner, because the focal point should be submitted before the end of this month. And for us as civil society, we will start right after this meeting, we will start to engage so that that process can be done as soon as possible. Thank you so much.
Great, that's a great intervention. We appreciate your dedication in the partnership, Timothy, and other CSOs focal points. Thank you. Dajuri, can I give you a second? 1 minute, please, before we come to a close. I see your hand. Dajori.
Oui, oui, merci. Donc, moi, c'est Lebriné Dajouari de l'association Afrique Solidaire. Donc, nous sommes très nouveaux dans l'organisation. On tenait à vous remercier pour ces différentes initiatives. Et très rapidement, juste une question, c'est de savoir, après l'élection du champion et après des ateliers, les réunions, on a compris que c'est ça qui permet de faire remonter les données. On voulait savoir, est-ce qu'il existe des plateformes numériques qui puissent permettre de renseigner directement en ligne, en plus des réunions de concertation et des différents ateliers qui sont organisés? Merci.
Thank you, Dajori, for the question.
Oui, donc on n'a actuellement pas de plateforme en ligne pour renseigner les résultats. Parce que I hear the French translate. J'entends le traduction française dans le canal français. Ok. Donc, on n'a pas de plateforme en ligne pour renseigner les résultats pour le moment. Ça pourrait techniquement être possible, mais on essaye au maximum d'encourager une discussion, en fait, que les partenaires discutent ensemble et trouvent un résultat et un consensus ensemble. Donc, on ne va pas pousser pour que chaque partenaire puisse remplir de son côté. Par contre, ce qu'on aimerait essayer de faire d'ici la fin de l'année probablement ou début d'année prochaine, c'est d'avoir en ligne une plateforme pour rendre compte des résultats. Alors, on ne publiera pas les scores par pays parce que ça, c'est quelque chose qui appartient vraiment à chaque pays et qui doit vous rester interne. Mais on aimerait publier des agrégations au niveau régional ou au niveau global et trouver une manière de rendre compte de manière visuelle et interactive de ce qui se passe dans les pays. J'espère que ça répond à votre question.
Oui, c'est bon, merci.
Thank you very much, Ines, for the responses. I note that I didn't introduce my name, but quickly, I am Nompumelelo Nchalinchalimota. I am the SWA Africa Region Coordinator, and I will be saying just a few remarks in closing before I give the floor to my colleague, Balvant, who is also who's also an Africa Region Advisor. He will say it in French. I will continue in English. On behalf of SWA Secretariat, I would like to thank you all for participating in this webinar. We noted, we saw a lot of our focal points. We saw a lot of our partners participating. We truly appreciate the efforts also by the results of framework champions from Zimbabwe and Niger for sharing their experiences. We therefore hope that this webinar inspired you to collaborate with us, SWA, on rolling out the SWA result framework initiative, and that you are already thinking of who could be the monitoring champion in your country. We expect you to get together in one of your SMPs, multi-stakeholder forums, to decide on who should drive this forward in your country. We'll be happy, therefore, to continue this conversation with you in the future. And please reach out to us wherever you are ready to start the country self-assessment, and we'll gladly support you. Remember, you have until October 2021 to start this process. However, starting it earlier could be also great and appreciated. It is with great anticipation that we look forward to having you start the process in your countries. And goodbye, and thank you once again for your time. I'll give the floor to Balvant. You have the floor, Balvant, for 2 minutes.
Ok, merci. J'espère que tout le monde m'entend bien. Alors, j'ai le plaisir de faire ces deux petites remarques de conclusion pour ce webinaire. Merci de votre participation. Nous avons vu une audience nombreuse et variée dans ce webinaire. de différentes parties du monde, de différents partenaires. Et donc, merci à tout le monde d'avoir participé. Merci aux champions de Zimbabwe et de Niger d'avoir partagé leur expérience. Et nous espérons que donc, ce webinaire vous inspirera à renforcer la collaboration avec le SWA et à mettre en œuvre ce cadre de résultats, et que vous êtes déjà en train de réfléchir à qui pourrait être le champion pour ce cadre dans votre pays, dans vos pays respectifs. Alors, comme d'habitude, comme toujours, n'hésitez pas à nous contacter à ce sujet et à bien d'autres. Et puis, avec ces mots, je vous dis merci encore, et je pense que la séance est maintenant levée. Merci.
If we can just, oh, sorry.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
If we can just keep you for a few seconds, we have a poll with a few satisfaction questions on this webinar. It will take you just a minute to answer them. Tabia, can you please start the poll?